She called me a buoy, said I only look good floating in the dark. That is what my wife, female, 34 years old, sent to her ex-boyfriend while I, male, 36 years old, slept 10 feet away with our bulldog snoring into my shoulder. By the way, the photo she texted him? Me in my boxers, jaw slack, stomach soft in the blue glow from our aquarium. She added, "Beached buoy has no clue." And if you think that is the worst of it, wait until you hear how she turned our marriage into a group chat game. How her ex made bets on my backslide and why I did not confront her. I evacuated. By the time I am done, you will already know the ending. I offer bread, a perfect steak, and then a note on the counter next to the mint plant I kept alive for 3 summers. I want a divorce. That was not the twist. The twist came when I learned I was never the only audience. We met at a neighborhood 10K. I was coaching middle school runners then, lean, obnoxiously proud of buying grapefruit at the farmer's market at 7 in the morning. She was the quick one in red headphones who paced me the last mile, then laughed when I tried to float a race flirt. We got married 4 years later. Last winter, my father died, and the school cut track to reallocate funds. Grief plus idle hours is a heavy mix. I ate convenience, microwave ramen with thick slices of American cheese at 2 in the morning. I was not running. 30 pounds arrived like wet wool. Some days it was a victory to shower. Back then, my wife brought me cinnamon rolls from the Kraft Bakery, kissed my forehead, and whispered, "We are a team." She still posted sunlit photos of us to her private Instagram. Latte art, my hand on her waist, her caption, "Home." The same week my doctor said, "Your blood pressure is creeping," I saw our iPad ping with a notification. I reached for it without thinking because it was across the counter next to a bowl of lemons I kept meaning to use. It opened to Messenger where my wife was mid-story to the ex. There was a photo of me from the couch, open mouth, double chin, soft belly under a faded college t-shirt, and a string of cry-laughing emojis. "He says he is getting back on keto," she typed, but he just hid Doritos behind the flour. Then, beached buoy. The ex replied, "You always had a thing for projects," and asked for another picture. My fingers went cold on the smooth aluminum edge of the iPad. I stood in the kitchen that smelled like coffee and thawing shrimp, and the room tilted because I realized my wife had been narrating me to an audience who did not clap. He cackled, and she kept performing. I told myself there must be context, sarcasm, venting, some twisted humor I had missed. But a little red dot on a group, core crew, froze me worse than the first message. She had a private group chat with 3 coworkers and her ex. The banner was a white buoy icon. My name was a running joke. They took votes. Would I go to the gym this week? Would I cave at the donut table? They called it Family Fantasy League. Winner buys cocktails. I scrolled until my chest burned and the winter afternoon turned silver through the blinds. The microwave clock blinked 2:11. In one video, my wife filmed me from the hallway mirror angle while I tied my shoes. "Attempt number, drum roll," she whispered. A coworker commented, "He's a walking New Year's resolution." My wife replied, "He's a January 8th. The ex wrote, "Send the snore symphony tonight." And that is when the refrigerator hummed like it was holding its breath, and I understood that there are betrayals that touch your body, and there are betrayals that live in your lungs. I wish I had a hero story where I confronted her over a candlelit table and set the world on fire with a speech about dignity. That is not this story. My wife is magnetic, wide smile, quick jokes, the kind of person who can make you doubt your own memory. The handful of times I broached small disappointments, like calling me grandpa in front of her friends when I chose to go home early, she tilted her head, smiled, and said, "Babe, relax, it's playful. We roast because we love." She made bread every Sunday. The apartment smelled like rosemary and butter, and you forget your spine in rooms like that. So I did what you would probably call weak at first. I gathered proof. I reopened the iPad for weeks at a time, not every day, just enough to map the pattern. My friend Kia, female, 37 years old, a paralegal who drinks tea like it's a job, told me, document, quietly. She listened while we sat at her kitchen table eating leftover lasagna from a glass dish. Kia is the kind of friend who keeps olive oil in a pretty green bottle and a spare toothbrush for you just in case. She said, the performance is where the power is. Stop clapping. She also said a sentence I still hear sometimes when the apartment goes too quiet. He didn't cheat. He built a double stage. We found more. Old screenshots dating back to when my father first got sick. The group cheerfully suggested challenges for me like a secret reality show. The ex sent a meme of a whale sticker and wrote, "What's the weather like on the couch?" Title? A coworker posted, "I cannot stand that he still wears that college shirt." And my wife replied with a photo, close up on a spaghetti stain I had not seen. I remembered the morning she laughed and said, "Turn the shirt inside out and it is clean." The image of her filming me while I slept made my neck flush hot. The worst clip was the simplest. She panned over my sleeping face while an old true crime podcast mumbled in the background. She whispered, "The beast rests," and giggled. Kia said, "Do you think gaslighting destroys marriages faster than cheating?" I could not answer. What would I call this? It was not flirtation, though the ex threw winks like darts. It was not physical cheating. There was no hotel receipt. But when I read my wife's typing bubbles narrating my walk from bed to bathroom, stampede begins. My heart knew which word belonged. Is online cheating real cheating? Tell me how it is not when the intimacy is humiliating me for applause. There is a scene I replay like a short. I am slicing strawberries. A seed sticks to the knife. She leans in behind me, warm breath, jasmine lotion, and says, "You look good with a knife. Domestic kin." At the same second, her Apple Watch lights up, and I see the buoy icon in pixels on her wrist. She taps it away with the pink of her thumb. She kisses my shoulder. I feel it like a push. The subplot in this mess came from a story Kia told me that night over lasagna, the one that taught me exactly which door to take later. 5 years earlier, she dated a man named Mark who never flirted with anyone in front of her. He was even shy about touching her in public, which she decided was sweet. She later learned he had a private Telegram channel with 3 college friends where he workshopped bits, many about her. Once, after she cried over getting passed on a promotion, he posted a screenshot of her tearful texts and a caption, "Can we crowdsource a smaller violin?" They rated his lines with flame emojis. They called her Miss Policy because she worked in compliance. "I forgave him the first time," she said, voice flat but steady, "because he said it was just jokes. The second time, he filmed me laughing in my sleep and made a joke about me dreaming about employee handbooks." She left a month later. "I walked away without a speech," she added. "He tried to tell everyone I overreacted to humor, but I had already moved my name off the lease." That night, I stared at the ceiling fan, spinning like it was counting. A street sweeper hissed outside. The aquarium light cast a shaky glow across the room, like fish ghosts. My wife turned and tugged at the duvet. "Come here," she murmured, half asleep. I did not move. "You are the joke, but I am the punchline," I whispered into the dark and felt the sentence click in the air like a lock. Here is where the story turns. My wife had told me for weeks that her ex was planning to visit the city for meetings. On the calendar, blocked 3 days. She said they were going to grab coffee for closure. She looked at me when she said closure and smiled slow like the word itself was a test. She had been more attentive than ever. Clean counters, my favorite boxed mac and cheese exactly al dente, texts in the middle of the day, thinking of you. I used to swallow those texts like candy. Now I saw them as props. So I did something small that changed everything. I turned off the iPad notifications for Messenger and moved the app to a folder named Utilities. Then I wiped my fingerprints from the screen. I taped a post-it under the table with a list of 3 phone numbers: my lawyer, the locksmith, and my sister, female, 31 years old, who lives in another part of the city with her wife and a gray cat that hisses like a leaky soda. The night before the ex arrived, I made roast chicken with lemon and thyme. The kitchen smelled like a rotisserie you can smell from the street. I poured her a glass of chilled white wine and pretended my face had forgotten how to feel. "You are glowing," she said, pinching my cheek. "Gym can era?" I smiled. We watched a crime documentary, and she tucked her feet under my thigh. On the screen, a detective said, "Sometimes the smallest mistakes solve the case." She laughed and said, "Amen," and reached for her phone. Midpoint, the twist. I had assumed my humiliation had an audience of 5. I was wrong. The next day, while she grabbed coffee, a new message pinged on our shared laptop because an old setting synced everything for a glorious, stupid moment. It was from a number labeled A Work. He was not just her ex. He was her regional manager, the man who had introduced her to the job 3 years ago, a man I had shaken hands with at a company picnic where the grill smoke smelled like every summer of my childhood. He wrote, "He should be at the gym by now, right? We still on for 6? Can you get a recording?" She replied, "Oh, please, he is a January 8th. My stomach fell in the shape of a sinkhole. Below that, a file shared link appeared, an archive named Buoy Reboot, a shared drive. I clicked. My laptop wheezed like a tired dog. Hundreds of clips, some with subtitles, some with their faces in a corner bubble like sports commentators. This was not a joke in a dark room. It was a project. There was also a spreadsheet, bet amounts column, date of relapse, a tab named soundboard, another tab named merch ideas where someone had typed buoy mug LMA. The comments glowed with hearts and thumbs up. So many people had watched me sleep. I did not feel rage the way movies show it. No smashed wine glass, no shouted speech. I felt a clean line draw through my chest like a seam ripper. I thought of Kia's manual exit. I thought of my father's old advice. "Son, protect your name. It is the only shirt that never gets replaced." I closed the laptop, lifted the mint plant, and set it in a cardboard box. Then I took a photo of the open spreadsheet and emailed it to myself. I called the locksmith. I called my lawyer. I texted my sister, who sent back a single emoji of a key. When my wife came home, she had that glow, winded, excited, like a runner after a race. She set a paper cup of iced coffee on the counter and said, "I got 2 extra shots for energy." I nodded and asked how the day went. "So productive," she said, slicing off a piece of bakery baguette like she was in an ad. She kissed my cheek. I felt the jasmine lotion again. My heart did not move. I said, "Let us do steaks tonight." She clapped. Spoiling me? What did I do to deserve this? I looked at the post-it under the table and smiled. If you are wondering why I did not blow it up right there, ask yourself what confrontation would give me that leaving would not. She had already written the audience. If I confronted, I would become a new episode. The overly sensitive husband explodes. She would cry, she would apologize, she would atomize shame into laughter, and then she would send a fresh clip, me red-faced across the kitchen island. Kia reminded me of her own quiet exit. So I cooked. I salted the steaks precisely, let them rest, seared them in a cast-iron pan that hissed like summer pavement after rain. I plated with rosemary and a pat of butter. She moaned into her first bite. "If love had a flavor," she said, "it would be this." I almost laughed. How perfect that line would read in the transcript. I poured her another glass of wine. We ate salad with cherry tomatoes that snapped. After dinner, she put on a playlist that smelled like high school, glossy pop, careless choruses. She tugged me to dance, and I let her. If that makes you angry, know that I understood something important that night. Ending can coexist with tenderness. She put her head on my shoulder and said, "See, we are fine." Later, she fell asleep early. The jasmine turned powdery on her skin. The room sounded like the aquarium gurgling and the city's softer hours breathing. I packed what mattered: a small stack of t-shirts that don't talk, my father's watch, a framed photo of me and my sister laughing with our mouths wide open, 2 pairs of running shoes, our bulldog's favorite toy, a blue rubber bone gnawed into a smile. I left the rest. Leave them the costume pieces. On the counter, next to the mint plant, I placed a manila envelope, divorce papers, the locksmith receipt, a simple letter that read, "Communicate through counsel." I added a short note below it. He did not cheat. He built a double life. I underlined double life. That was one of the memeable lines that hit me on the train later. Another one slid out of me when I locked the door behind me for the last time. Love does not film you sleeping. My sister opened her door in socks, and the gray cat hissed once and then decided my bulldog could stay because he is a gentleman. We sat on the rug, backs against the couch. She gave me a bowl of cereal even though it was nearly midnight. The milk tasted cold and honest. I slept in their guest room where the only sound was the radiator clicking on and off like an old friend thinking of you. In the morning, she and her wife handed me a mug of black coffee and a printout of job postings. "You are moving forward," my sister said. "We will tape this to the fridge and cross them off." My wife called 23 times the next day, then texted a paragraph about love and misunderstandings and how the team had gotten out of hand. In the last message she wrote, "Please, can we talk? Just us." The buoy icon flashed on my screen like a cartoon eye. Is cutting them off too extreme? I do not think so when the whole mode of communication was cutting me into pieces. She emailed, then she emailed my sister, then she called Kia and left an ornate apology that used the word context 4 times. My lawyer replied on my behalf. Papers moved. Locks changed again, because symbolic rituals matter. On the counter, next to the mint plant, I placed a manila envelope, divorce papers, the locksmith receipt, a simple letter that read, "Communicate through counsel." I added a short note below it. He did not cheat. He built a double life. I underlined double life. That was one of the memeable lines that hit me on the train later. Another one slid out of me when I locked the door behind me for the last time. Love does not film you sleeping. My sister opened her door in socks, and the gray cat hissed once and then decided my bulldog could stay because he is a gentleman. We sat on the rug, backs against the couch. She gave me a bowl of cereal even though it was nearly midnight. The milk tasted cold and honest. I slept in their guest room where the only sound was the radiator clicking on and off like an old friend thinking of you. In the morning, she and her wife handed me a mug of black coffee and a printout of job postings. "You are moving forward," my sister said. "We will tape this to the fridge and cross them off." My wife called 23 times the next day, then texted a paragraph about love and misunderstandings and how the team had gotten out of hand. In the last message she wrote, "Please, can we talk? Just us." The buoy icon flashed on my screen like a cartoon eye. Is cutting them off too extreme? I do not think so when the whole mode of communication was cutting me into pieces. She emailed, then she emailed my sister, then she called Kia and left an ornate apology that used the word context 4 times. My lawyer replied on my behalf. Papers moved. Locks changed again, because symbolic rituals matter.
A week later, Kia pushed me to make an appointment with a therapist who smells faintly of oranges and keeps a blue glass bowl of peppermint candies on her desk. I sat there with the candy dissolving like frost and said, "I feel stupid for not noticing sooner." She asked me a question I am still carrying around like a river stone that fits my palm. "Do you think betrayal changes you forever?" I looked out at the pigeons on the windowsill and said, "Yes, but maybe not only in the way they expect." I started running again, not to rebuild a brand new body, but to relearn my breath. The first lap around the park in worn shoes felt like a long apology to myself. I cooked for my sister's little household, mushroom omelets, grilled peaches, pasta with garlic and oil that made the apartment smell like a kitchen in a movie where people survive. The bulldog began sleeping without huffing. That is how I measure time. Here is the part where people online always ask what happened to her next. Did the ex step in like a night of chaos? Did the group chat implode? I do not know the whole of it. I know she forwarded a long apology email through my lawyer, saying she never meant harm, that the group was how she processed stress, and that she now understands the harm. The word harm repeated enough times that it turned into static. The ex wrote me once through a fake email address to say, "It was jokes, you know how guys are." I replied with one period. Kia said I should not have replied at all, but I liked the idea of a single dot like a door clicking shut from my side. Did I ever wonder if I should have confronted her? Weakly. The temptation to demand a scene lives under the tongue. But then I remember the spreadsheet. I remember the bet column. I remember the soundboard. He didn't cheat. He wrote scripts. That line still keeps me steady. Some nights I hear a distant train and feel the amber of grief swirl behind my ribs. That is okay. Grief is not a sign I did not choose well. It is a sign I loved in good faith. Do you think betrayal changes you forever? The therapist's question whispered again. Yes. Now I check the edges of kindness for cameras. But I also learned exactly what my dignity weighs. It is heavier than a ring. It is lighter than a lie. One last question has followed me like a dog that wants to be invited inside. Is online cheating real cheating? I will not argue with anyone about it. I will not give a TED Talk. Here is my definition, learned the cold way. If intimacy about me is shared with others to humiliate me, it is cheating on us. If my sleeping face is a punchline elsewhere, I am not coming home. The crowd effect helps too. My sister and Kia became a choir. The barista at the corner cafe learned my order and slid me an extra oatmeal cookie on a Tuesday just because. The smell of that cookie, cinnamon and sugar, was a small ceremony. Months later, on a gray Tuesday that looked like wet concrete, I saw my wife outside the grocery store where we used to argue over brands of olives. She had cut her hair. She walked over with a flat smile. "I heard you are running again," she said, which told me she still read the public parts of my life. I said, "Yeah, it helps." We stood there among carts that clattered like castanets. She looked down at her hands. "I am getting help," she said. Then she added, "I never slept with him." The sentence landed between us like a plate. I nodded. "He did not cheat. He built a double life," I said softly, as if we were repeating the closing line of a play. She winced. "That is the line you were going with?" That made me smile because it sounded like she was still thinking in scripts. I said, "I hope you get what you need." She said, "You look good." And for a flash, I saw her reach for her phone in her pocket. Reflex, not plan. She stopped herself. I watched the moment pass over her face like a shadow from a fast cloud. I walked home with a paper bag that smelled like basil. In my kitchen, I made a simple pasta, splashed a little of the cooking water in the pan so the sauce clung. I ate standing by the window, tasting garlic and quiet. There are days when I want revenge like sugar. Then I hear Kia's voice. Silence is sometimes the loudest revenge. I breathe out and I let the quiet eat. If you are reading this and wrestling with the urge to scroll their messages, to chase proof like it will finally make your heart settle, I will not moralize. I asked myself, would you check your partner's phone after this? My answer now is, I will check my own first. Do I feel safe? Do I feel seen? If not, the phone is a mirror I do not need. Tonight, the bulldog snored in a way that made me laugh out loud. I took a photo. I did not send it to anyone. I printed it and taped it to the fridge with blue painter's tape next to the list of job posts with 3 of them crossed out in black marker.
I am building something that is not a stage. And when the lights are off and the apartment is just mine, I say a sentence out loud so the room can learn it with me. I left because I am a human being, not a storyline. Then the heat clicks on. Then the street outside murmurs. Then I sleep like a person nobody is filming.